Hi, friends. I just wanted to jump on here really fast before we play this episode and let you know that this is an episode that I recorded with Bruce Parkman from the Broken Brains podcast. He does some great work and is very passionate about getting quality information out to people as well about concussions and head injury, and I really appreciate what he's doing and wanted to have you guys be aware of this resource that is there. So enjoy this episode.
Hi friends, thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com.
Want people to know that it is serious and to take it seriously. Your brain, again, you get one of them and it impacts every aspect of your life and being. So take it seriously. Some of the biggest advice that I would have for them is to believe them when they tell you what they're experiencing. That's advice that I've heard so often coming from caregivers, coming from people who've experienced concussions. Like if they feel seen and believed, it really makes a big difference.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Broken Brains with your host, Bruce Parkman, the official podcast of the Mac Parkman Foundation, where we talked about the issue of repetitive brain trauma, from repetitive head impacts in contact sports to repetitive blast exposure to our veterans, and what these repetitive conditions are doing to the brains, mental health, and futures of our kids, athletes, and veterans. And why is this important? Because this is not trained in our medical, nursing, and psychological communities, meaning that you become the first line of defense, because this is affecting millions of Americans who suffer in silence without any idea that their trauma can be healed and that there is hope for them in this journey. So we bring on the most amazing guests to talk about this issue so that you have the information you need to make informed decisions about the ones that you love. On today's show, another amazing guest, Mrs. Bethany Lewis is a wife, mom of 6, neurological occupational therapist, and a certified life coach who's passionate about helping people heal from concussions inside and out. As the host of the Concussion Coach podcast, she brings light, understanding, and hope to anyone struggling with lingering concussion symptoms. Drawing from her experience in brain health, emotional well-being, and occupational therapy, Bethany shares insights, stories, and tools to help listeners speed up recovery, find peace of mind, and get back to living a full, meaningful life after a concussion. Bethany, welcome to the show, and thank you so much, not only for what you do, but for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us, with our audience.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so grateful for the invite. Thank you so much. I just love your intro as well of what the purpose of what you guys are doing. It just resonates a lot. I feel like we're on this passion project together. So thank you for what you're doing as well.
Well, we are. No, and it's really amazing, as you were mentioning earlier, how the network of people that are informed and trying to do something about this instead of just watching the pain as we have done for decades is very reassuring. It's enlightening, and it's bringing great hope to a lot of us, and it's real amazing to understand. So tell us, how did you get involved with concussions? I mean, you're a neurological occupational therapist, so you know a little bit about it. But what got you so involved in this issue and to try and help others out?
Yeah, I did occupational therapy. I graduated in 2009. Feels like a lifetime ago. Um, and was mostly just working in skilled nursing facilities, some outpatient stuff, home health, just did kind of normal OT things. Excuse me. And then I started working at a concussion clinic in Provo, Utah, and just seeing all of the people who came through. I did not have previous experience with working with people with concussions. That was not, I think I had one, maybe half of a, a class in OT school about concussions. And so I didn't have a lot of experience, but when I started working there, I just learned so much, and just seeing all of the patients who came through whose lives had been completely turned upside down by concussion. And my mind was blown. I was like, wait, what? I had no idea that a concussion could literally just like pull the rug out from somebody's life. It just made such a difference for people. And then to see them actually make improvements, and to have been told over and over again, like, this is the best you're going to be, like, this is your new normal, get used to it. And then have them come through this intensive program that I was working at, and then to see them make massive improvements was just, I just got very passionate about, like, there needs to be more word out there for people to know that there is hope for healing, and just awareness that this can be a thing. Because I think, like you said before, so many people are suffering in silence. People may not know that they had a concussion. They might not, even if they do know that, they might not realize that there is healing that can happen from it. And this does not have to be your forever state of being. So that got me very passionate about it. And I just feel very strongly about it. So I started the podcast, and it's been, it's been I love the people I've gotten to meet through it, and helping people through the coaching has just been very rewarding and very exciting to see the progress people make. So I just love it.
Uh, and you bring up a lot of good questions. I mean, number one, I mean, everybody knows what a concussion is, right? I mean, we have all experienced, and we all know we have spent hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, researching concussions and TBI and all this. So why is it, after all this research, all the studies, and we think we know everything about concussion, that people come to your clinic, like they come to clinics all the way around the country? Like, I went to a clinic when my son had concussions, and we don't know anything about them. I mean, we had a concussion, and yet it's like, okay, bed rest for 2 weeks, go back to play. That's the typical. We have no idea that this is it's a brain injury, right? It's why are we still in this dark age of understanding how, how not risky, or I don't want to put dangerous on, but how, potentially dangerous a concussion actually is from a brain perspective.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think it comes down to education, probably. I feel like great progress is being made. I think there is a lot of like advocacy work going on, kind of what you and I are doing, and other professionals. There's a lot of um, changes happening, and I know that people are doing more continuing education for professionals who are already practicing. But like me, I did not get that training when I was in school. And it wasn't until I was working at a clinic that focused on it that my eyes were open to it. And so, and again, I think also kind of it goes also back to that social, I don't know if it's necessarily like reticence to talk about it, but there's just people, if you're suffering from something and it's your ability to think, and like a few things going on for the individuals so that it's not being talked about. I think one is that they're not really necessarily aware of what's going on. Two is, if they're trying to recover from a brain injury themselves, then they're not really probably capable of putting into words and clearly defining what's going on. And like, if you're in the middle of recovery, that's a hard thing to talk about. And three, I think there's a lot of people who are like, well, my job requires me to be thinking clearly. If somebody hears that I have a brain injury, maybe they won't keep me hired or whatever. There are pressures that are in place, whether they're real or imagined or put upon ourselves, that I think prevent people from talking about it as much as would probably be useful and helpful. And again, kind of what you and I are doing with bringing people on to talk about their experience. A lot of those people are a little bit on the other side to a point where they can talk about it, right? So I think I think that's the solution, is to try to just get more people talking about it, more education in the professional settings right now, and also in continuing education for professionals who have already graduated without the knowledge that was needed.
So you bring up a point that, you received 1 hour on concussions in your occupational therapy, in your training.
Mhm.
And, and here we know that concussions, almost every child gets a concussion. If they're active, they're going to get a ding on the head. And, what were you taught? What were the gaps in your training? Why did you, as a trained nursing professional, and what I'm looking at right now is how do we get ahead of this through education and awareness? We know that this is a huge issue in how we train our medical professionals. And you are a medical professional that went through training, yet in a concussion clinic, you're seeing, just you're blown away by of all the new knowledge and treatments and everything that's out there. What can we do a better job of, in preparing our medical professionals for dealing with this issue that, I mean, we have 2.4 million TBIs a year in this country. It hits everybody.
Yeah, and I think that is the question, right? It is a very good question. I think that having that education, I think people who know about it and are passionate about it, having those conversations, trying to get that education into into the schools in the first place, I think would be really, really beneficial. And I think just getting that education to families and friends, to lay people, as well, to just, if we can help everybody rise up in their understanding of it, that would make a big difference. I think there are, like I said, I know there are people who are out there doing continuing education on things, and more just clinics that are helping with this kind of thing. If we can just get more education out there. And I know I spoke with Kellyanne, I'm trying to remember her last name, the Brain Body OT on Instagram. She's awesome. She's a very passionate OT who works in New York, New Jersey area, and she's working towards creating more collaboration between different disciplines, so that and going to the state level or the brain injury associations and talking to them about, like, let's make sure that we're helping each other understand what's going on and working together to help patients better. It's there's just there is a lot of room for improvement, and I do think that we're progressing that way, which is a very positive thing. Um, but yeah.
Absolutely. So when we talk about, concussions, talk to our audience about what a concussion is. Like, a lot of people think that concussion, you have to be knocked out. Now, I'm
Mm.
a semi-pro rugby player. I have woken up on the pitch a couple times and ran down to make another tackle. And unfortunately, we think that a concussion is just not just a knock on the head, right? You have to have some catastrophic hit in order to have a concussion. Explain to our audience, from your perspective, what is a concussion, so that they understand this better.
Yeah, great question. And something that I think does need to be brought to people's awareness, because yes, you can there are myths out there of, you think people think they have to have been knocked out completely. But you don't even have to have hit your head to have a concussion. The concussion is the brain, essentially the brain being jostled around inside the skull, and that can happen from whiplash. So you don't even have to hit your head. It can happen from concussive force from a blast, which I know you know well and have talked about a lot on this podcast. There are ways that you can get concussion that don't require hit to head, but that trauma to the head itself or to the body that moves the head on the body, that those things cause concussion, which is, like, again, that jostling, that shearing force in the brain, and it's an issue of blood flow, and it's a metabolic injury. There are it's there's inflammation that happens in the brain, and it can cause so many symptoms. But you do not have to be knocked out. You do not have to have hit your head. And you this is something I think can be very confusing and surprising for people, is that the severity of the impact does not necessarily equal how severe the symptomology and what happens afterwards can be. So you can have what might look like a pretty severe, like, knock to the head, and some people will recover just fine from that. And you can also have a hit or not a hit and just have a little bit of whiplash and be completely deal with post-concussion issues for a long time. So it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily equate, which is something that can be very confusing for people, I think. But the brain that you bring into the concussion matters. That's what will impact how severe your experience of it is. So if you've had previous concussions, or lots of subconcussive hits, then that can kind of build up to a point. And in some cases, for a woman, depending on what timing her cycle she is, that can impact it. There's just a lot of things that we don't think about in relation to this that can make a difference and make it that much more confusing for
No,
what is
absolutely. And I mean, and that's one of the problems with dealing with a concussion, I think, is that no brain's alike, right? You cannot,
Yeah.
there is absolutely no way to replicate an injury to somebody's brain because of the multiplicity of, angle. Let's talk about that a little bit, is like when you say, you can have a really significant impact and not have any damage. And you could have a light knock, you have, boxers that have, like, they call it that paper, that glass jaw, where they get a little dang and all of a sudden, their lights out and somebody else can take a roundhouse to the head and keep fighting. Right. What are those factors? How do those, factors play into the severity? I mean, you got, so many different issues there. And you talked about some of them. I mean, the brain, having previous concussions, what do parents need to be aware of? Say after the kid, like my son had 3 in over 2 different years. On the third one, I said no more. And I wish so much that I would have just stopped them. I said, you're done. And I talked to the coaches and I said, I want to know, I want somebody to tell me this is third one. What's the number? I didn't know. Right? I was like, is there a number? Because I'm hearing 3. Well, my boy never had another concussion, and I let him keep playing because he didn't have one, or that I thought, or that was a diagnosable concussion. So if you can explain to our parents, what, these, the why you have to be on guard all the time, because, how can you have a concussion and not even know that you had one?
Yeah, those are very good questions. I think that, well, to the one that you just asked, how can you have a concussion and not know it, is, I think, again, it's that you can have those subconcussive hits where you don't know it. Your brain has been jostled a bit, but it's not enough to really cause the damage. It's the buildup of those subconcussive things that causes problem. And that's kind of more on that CTE side. Concussion is more of the trauma, but you can, I think sometimes people, the way that they can have a concussion, not really realize it. And I think in sports, people are looking for it. But usually what I'm thinking of is people who've had a car accident, or they stood up into the countertop and didn't, and it hurt for a second and then they're fine. And then a couple days later, they start feeling off, but they don't necessarily associate that with the hit to the head that happened before, or again, whiplash, and they didn't even hit their head. So they couldn't be having concussion issues because they didn't even hit their head. So I think that's how people might not know it. I think on the sports side, and I hope the parents are paying attention, and I do feel like, again, the conversation is changing a little bit. People are more aware and careful with it. But it's important to take it seriously. Like, your kid gets one brain, right? And so if there's knocks to the head, you want to take it very seriously. And there is so much, like you said, there's so much pressure to get back in the game. Like, parents sometimes want it, and sometimes the kids really want it, and the coaches may really want it, and it's just very much worth it to take it very seriously every single time it happens, and take the time, get the testing done, see a concussion specialist, like, go through the process to make sure that things are getting better. And I did a podcast interview with Natasha Welch. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she's a physiotherapist in Canada, and she's great. And she talked about how she just, that return to play protocol, she really wants people to be doing, like, have 2 successful non-contact practices, and really, like, see how confident the kids are. And, like, because if you're not confident going in, you're more likely to get injured. So just, like, really taking it slow and being very careful with the return to play. because on the other side of it, it's not just like pressure, hey, you have to do this, but people love it. Like a lot of times it's tied into the kid's identity. Like it's not an easy fix. It's not easy to just be like, no, you're done, don't ever play that again. So like I think it's important to recognize all of the factors playing into that, and
And
it's
so what?
not easy, but it is important to take it seriously.
It is. And you talk about the child's identity, right? And so many of these kids are wrapped up in the sports, and sometimes the parents are wrapped up even worse than the kids, right?
Yeah.
So, when it comes to non-contact sports, say baseball, basketball, golf, tennis, whatever, right? Where all these other sports that aren't contact sports, the conversations with the parents are a little bit, different, because the concussions are kind of the outlier, to your point. We should be looking for this in contact sports. So, but you mentioned, hey, you only get one brain, all right? Can you explain to our parents out there, and to our athletes, and to guys like me who had no idea, how complex and fragile, how important our brain is? Like, we just should not be messing with this, right? I mean, after and when you get to the net of it all these sports and your ability to actually have a career playing sports, and making money and making jingle, all those, rolling that ball, those dice, rolling that dice that whole time, and damaging, this God-given, complex, amazing organ. Tell our parents how important this is to their child, their future, everything that their kid could become.
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. Thank you for asking that. And it's funny because I feel like there's two sides to everything. Like on the one hand, um, your your brain is fragile in the sense that if it has if it's damaged, it needs to heal. There are like it is it needs the space to heal. And I think people don't necessarily understand the extreme, I'm going to go use that word, extreme impacts that it can have on everything. Your brain is in charge of all parts of you. And so things that you don't even, again, you wouldn't even necessarily recognize are related to a head injury, like hormonal issues or digestive issues or blood pressure. Like there are so many things that can be significantly impacted. And then all of those things impact the way that you show up in your life, your ability to socialize and be with friends, your ability to study and do school, your ability to work. Like it really, really impacts all aspects of your life. And so I want people to know. And again, that was the thing that surprised me so much, was just how impactful and how pervasive the impacts are to every aspect of life and your body. Like literally everything is from the brain. And so it is very important. On the other side of that, though, is I want to make sure people know our brains are amazing. Like you said, God-given, like it is miraculous. It is an amazing organ. And their neuroplasticity is a thing. So healing and recovery can happen. It just requires the right kinds of help. And it is important, again, to take it seriously and to be intentional about the help that you're giving it. So I want people to take it serious and know that it makes a really big difference to all aspects of life, but also know that healing is possible and have that hope as well. So
Yeah.
take it seriously. Don't mess around with it, but also know that there are ways to heal it if you're in a position that you're like, well, my life is over. Like that's
No,
not,
and
yeah.
let's talk about that here in a little bit. But what I want to get to is that neuroplasticity one, because there are people out there that state that kids can play contact sports because their brains are plastic and that they can recover from all those little hits, which we know is absolute. But let me get your opinion on that. I mean, neuroplasticity, the brain is neuroplastic. And when you have an injury like a concussion, the chances of a very good recovery are, very high. But in terms of long-term neuroinflammation and the continuous hits that, that contact sports bring, how does that complicate, the potential recovery? I mean, with one concussion, outside of car crashes and, assaults and very, very violent events, right? A sports concussion the chance of recovery, I feel personally are very high, knowing what I know about the brains. But when we start complicating that with, the continuous repetitive nature of some of these contact sports, what risks does that introduce into the scenario?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think that, and this is an area that is growing. Our understanding of this is little bitty baby. Like we are just touching the edge of understanding this. And so I am not, to be honest, I'm not like fully on educated in all of the research that's being done on CTE, but it is like it makes me pause like for sure. And the efforts that are being made to reduce the repetitive impact, especially for young kids and especially before 14, and in practices, like there are things that we can be doing that will make a difference, because you're right, that repetitive, we're just now learning
Right.
how really, really, really impactful to not only like future mental and emotional health and brain health, but and like dementia, like it is serious. And so taking that seriously, doing, I think if parents can advocate for no no contact in the practices or whatever, like there are things that can be done to reduce that. I think that we're going to be learning more, and we may come to a point where we look back and are like, I can't believe we did that. Like people did with other things that as knowledge has progressed, we're like, what were we
Yeah,
thinking? Yeah.
I think we're kind of there now as we look back, and it's just bananas what we now know as repetitive impacts gets more and more attention, because it was concussions. For years we focused on concussions because I think as a society where football is a religion, right, and hockey and our contact sports are just loved so much, it's like,
Mm.
I don't know if we really want to peek under that blanket, because
Yeah.
they know, everybody knows that, if this is harming adults, what's it doing to a child whose
Mhm.
brain is not developed till 25? I mean, and I still carry a lot of angst towards the community that really didn't dig into that and allow, parents to me to be informed. But that goes to the whole concept of what I would call grooming. I think we're kind of groomed to think that concussions are kind of innocuous. It's just a knock on the head. You're okay. Or you get your butt back out on that field. You're all, it's just a ding to the head. All right. Or be a tough girl or be a tough guy,
Mhm.
and it's just a concussion. All right. That's just a headache. Right. So, where do you sit on that? As far as, I mean, do you see people come, like where, they just think, for some reason, we think a concussion is basically a headache. Well, it's basically a brain injury, right? I mean,
It,
let's
it is
get
a
a
brain injury.
comment on that.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is a brain injury. And I think I hope that the conversation is changing, that people are learning to take it more seriously. And I think the way to get that out there is to just talk about it more. And it's crazy. I'm sure you've experienced this as you tell people, about your podcast, what you're doing. I guarantee almost everybody you talk to is like, oh yeah, I know somebody who had a really bad concussion, and then they can like tell you all about it. But so I think again, there's like minimal information out there, but yeah, if people take these things, the pervasive previous understanding of concussion was, oh yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's just a hit to the head, it's fine. And in previous generations too, I just think about my grandpa, who was a boxer and in the military, and but he was tough, right? Like you don't show weakness. Like I think we're still kind of dealing with that mindset to some degree of like, this is, yeah, just suck it up, get over it, get back out there.
Yeah.
And that's
Macho. I just had a
not.
guest on the show who was talking about macho couch potato dads who are living through their kids, and he brought up there's plenty of ways to be tough. Go sit in an ice bath for 3 minutes. That's toughness, all right? You don't have
It's
to get hit in the face, and now we've got, we talk to, girls who, we talk to moms whose coaches have the girls throw the soccer balls at each other's head, right? Because heading a soccer ball, they have to know how to head a soccer ball. This is and so when we talk about, kids hitting kids and girls heading soccer ball, and now girls playing boys sports with boys, right? I'm not talking about the guys that want to play on girls' teams. That's a whole nother topic. That's not even part of this. But and I'm not a fan of it at all. But here we got girls playing, with boys. Like I used to watch wrestling, and for in the state of Colorado, girls would wrestle with boys in their weight class, and it was brutal. I mean, what those boys would do to these girls just so their image, right? I mean, I'm not losing to a girl. I watch girls get hurt, and I said, why can't the girls just have their own league? But that's just one example where we're having, more and more women. Rugby right now is the fastest growing sport females in America. And I watched a doctor stand up at a brain conference say, well, it's not rugby if you're not tackling, and actually condone that girls tackle each other. And it's like, it's got nothing to do with boys versus girls. Brains are equal, right? Girls, and we all know that women are smarter than men. Don't even want to go down that road. I got it. And you mature a lot faster. And if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't even have a planet, which I actually would agree. I would agree right now, right? All these men, but at the same time, brains equal brains. And how do we, you got any advice on that? Because, girls' brains are no less susceptible to concussions than boys are, and they're both as vulnerable as they can be. And how do we address that? I mean, it's
I actually I believe, and I would need to confirm my research here, but I've heard that the women's brains are more susceptible to concussion than men's in a lot of cases, and so I do think it just needs to be taken seriously. And you're right. I think in general, a lot of times people think concussions in sports and they think male athletes, and that's a lot of the studies have been done on that, and it doesn't cover, especially, and I'm a middle-aged mom. Like middle-aged moms who get concussions, it's harder for them to recover. Like I'm bringing in that perspective too, but I'm sure girl teenagers have it just as bad. And again, there's that complication of the hormonal cycle that adds into it too. So it needs to be taken seriously in all sports, for all genders, for all of the things. Like we just need to be paying attention and taking brain injury seriously.
And there is science. I mean, there's actually research now that women are susceptible because they have a longer neck to body ratio, and they have a weaker neck muscle structure. It means when that soccer ball hits them, they're saying it hits up to 70% with more impact than a boy. And girls can kick a soccer ball just as hard as a dude did. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, some of them females can nail a soccer ball. And so there's all this other side of grooming where, girls play softer sports. No, I've watched female rugby. I'm a rugby player, man. I watch girls hit each other, and it's like you put two hockey girls coming at you. They might have less mass, but they hit at speeds faster than men. You got, we have to be. I mean, the whole point is, we have to be a little bit more careful with everybody. Why is it that women are so understudied when it comes to concussion research? You have any, why that? I mean, it is a huge gap, and it needs to be addressed because, women with the sports they play in all the sports: wrestling, lacrosse, hockey, soccer, rugby, and they'll try to play football until the mass just is, whatever. Right. But, we do have a problem with the lack of data that on females. Why do you think that is?
I think because of probably the cultural tendency to associate sports with the boys. I just think that's kind of how it's played out over the years, and that's where the money is. There's not a lot of. It's just. I mean,
it's
not as big. It's not as big. Girls aren't generally as interested in running into each other as boys are too. So there's just like more of that.
Don't tell that to a female rugby player. Gosh, they want to.
A generalization, definitely.
Yeah, no, I got you. No, it's just a joke.
But I think that's why. I think there's just more boys doing it, and the sporting world is huge, and it has money, and like I think that that's where the focus and attention is, and that's and so there is definitely a lack of knowledge and study and research on the impact for women of all ages.
That's fair. Now let's talk about hope. Okay. Now, when you said you got into the brain space and you got into your first concussion clinic, you were amazed at the treatments that were taking place. And so what was going on there? What was such a source of amazement? And then let's talk about where are we at, and what are you seeing as some of the frontiers of recovering from these unfortunate instances, no matter how they take place.
Yeah. So the things that amazed me were just again, that neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to change, and the the way that by utilizing multiple different senses, our vision and our vestibular sense and our balance, like, or all of the sensory inputs that we can use in different ways to help uh, heal the brain is just so cool. It's amazing, and the different using occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, like there's vision therapy. There's just so many different angles to access and help heal the brain that make a difference in doing them together. I think that one of the issues in the world in general of concussion recovery is that it tends to be very siloed care. One person will work on this one aspect of recovery, and another person will work on this aspect. And really, it needs to be looked at the whole person as a whole to make the difference. But that was, I mean, the thing that amazed me working there was just like the impact, the healing that was possible when you have all of those pieces dialed in. And yeah, and we're continuing to learn more things and new things that can help to improve concussion recovery rates, and how to access the brain to heal it. It's very cool to see the things that are happening. There's a lot with light therapy, different wavelengths of light that they're still like figuring out and working on. There's resonance or like vibration that can be very helpful. There's a lot of things out there that are um, working towards improvement that we didn't know about before, or that we didn't utilize in this way. So it's cool to see the progress that's being made, and also to know that there is hope. But it really does. I think that whole person perspective makes all the difference.
I love your enthusiasm about concussions, by the way. I think it's
Thank
amazing.
you.
Now, so when do parents need to be concerned? Okay, they bring you. Bethany sees them. All right, she checks them out, gives them great guidance and care, and we know that sometimes the impacts of a concussion don't go away, right? But it's not like right there. It's not like the dizzy days look that you have the day you got dinged in the head, right?
Yeah.
So, what should parents be on the lookout for? Because a concussion can be a significant event that's not done in 2 weeks. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a good question. And I like in my experience, and what I'm focusing on now is more because I'm not working with that clinic anymore, a little bit further away. And so I've been just working on my own concussion recovery, like more on the coaching side of like helping people find the resources that they need, and also supporting them, like nervous system, mental, emotional, that is often not seen. But going in, if a parent has a kiddo at like within that first little bit, you want to get them baseline tested. Go to somebody who works with people with acute concussions, and get them tested. Find out where they're at right now, and then you can see the improvement as they keep going. And that's a lot of times I think physical therapists, chiropractors can do those kinds of things. Primary care docs may be able to as well, but you want to find somebody who's like a concussion specialist. But getting them in, and then if they, there you can start doing therapies and treatments, and like if you can find out what's off right away, you can work on that, and that can be very helpful. Um, their natural healing can occur, and usually they don't call it what are they calling it now? Persistent percussive post concussive symptoms. That's it.
Syndrome, yeah,
PPCS,
PCS, yeah,
or
post-concussive syndrome.
PCS,
Yep,
post concussion syndrome.
yep.
So that usually, and I feel like there's not a whole lot of consistency on like full definitions, which is part of what makes all of this even more confusing for everybody. But generally about like 8 week, 2 to 3 months out, if they're still not feeling better, then that's a good time to say, okay, let's really let's dive in. Ahead of that, there may be healing that's occurring naturally, but I don't think it can hurt. I think it can only help if they take it seriously and get the help right away. Because that
Okay.
the
Yeah,
sooner
and
you
we
can get it,
know
better.
right,
But
and then we, it's known now, and you make up a good point. Like when my son had concussions, I was like, "All right, let's go see a doctor." I didn't know there was a concussion specialist, and because
yeah,
of my past being a rugby player and and having a lot of, I said, "All right, we got this. Let's talk a doctor." It didn't even occur to me that my son might have been hurt, and he had one concussion, which I wasn't there, and if I would have been there, it might have been the end. It was a very bad one. He was suplexed on a wrestling mat. But he was
well,
cleared 2 weeks later, and I trusted the DO, and it wasn't the DO's fault. He didn't display, any issues. When, and so if you can, talk a little bit about this, if you're able to, about, how some of these post-concussion syndrome symptoms, could emanate in the form of mental health problems.
yeah,
What should parents be on the lookout? Because this is very important because when your child is showing mental health impact and mental health symptoms, it's not because they're mentally ill. It could have been, because of the concussion. And then because we're not aware of that potentiality, we're taking these kids that should be going to see you, we're taking them to go see a psychiatrist. So talk about this a little bit because this is bothers the hell out of me that we're medicating, our children when they might need a different form of medicine, which is stop playing sports for a bit or more rest or whatever. So talk about that a little bit because there is a confluence between, anxiety, depression, sleep disorder, light and noise disorders, whatever the symptom might be. And so that concussion was a month ago or 2 months ago. It can't be that. Even though you've
yeah.
been cleared and maybe back to playing, we got to go see a psychologist because you're acting out. You're crazy, whatever. Talk about this a little
Yeah. Ah, yes, you're right. I'm glad that you can sense my passion for this because that like you just nailed such an important question, and it's important for people to know this, that if you had prior um ADHD symptoms or anxiety or depression, things that are challenging on that mental or emotional side, cognitive side, those anything previous gets magnified with a concussion. It can be bigger.
Good point.
And if you didn't have it before, you can have it afterwards. And again, lots of misdiagnoses like, oh, you have all of a sudden you got ADHD and you didn't have trouble focusing before, or you're, yeah, suddenly diagnosed with depression or anxiety. These things can absolutely come from concussion. I think a lot of times the irritability is kind of the first thing that a lot of times people recognize. And I think it's important too to note that the the person themselves who has had the injury may or may not recognize all of these. Sometimes it's easier
No,
for the family member to see it, because their self-awareness is not always up to par either. That can be impacted too. So, but I think that a lot of times people do feel it, they know it, and they don't understand it and don't know what to do with it. So it is, yeah, just throwing medications at this new, quote unquote, new diagnosis of mental health issues is not the way. And I don't want to say that medications can never be helpful. I've talked to people for whom it has been helpful, but it needs to be, you absolutely need to be addressing the underlying brain injury as well. Or prioritize, like, make sure that that is being addressed because that's where it's coming from. And a huge part of this is the brain, um for a multitude of reasons, doesn't feel safe. It's this nervous system component of, like, all of a sudden the eyes don't function the way they could, and you can't tell how far away things are, and so your brain goes on high alert, or you can't tell where sounds are coming from exactly and pinpoint that, and so your brain feels unsafe. And so there's these underlying things that, even though you can't, a lot of times people are having vision issues and they don't even realize it, so they don't know that their brain is working so hard to get their eyes to work well, and that's causing all this fatigue, and it's providing this, like, sense of anxiety because in your body doesn't know where it is in space, and therefore it's in danger again. And so like that increases the anxiety. There are so many aspects to it. And the depression piece, there are, there's situational stuff going on. You don't feel like yourself. There are so many things that play into this that will be helped by treatment for the concussion itself, and addressing them directly, like individually, and just being like, hey, this is going on, like let's talk about it, let's understand what's happening. And there are things physiologically, mentally, emotionally, like with people that you can work on that will be helpful for those things. But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. Like I think very often people don't get it and just throw drugs or therapy, and therapy can be very, very helpful. I don't want to say that that's, especially if you can find a therapist who understands concussion, that's like gold. Like do that. But even people who don't, like I've heard mixed things, like, but people can get a lot of good from just traditional therapy as well as, the other things, but that can be an important part of recovery for people as well.
But I think we can both agree that yes, drugs and therapy can be beneficial, but if you're going to continue it, but if you have a complete unawareness that mental illness could be attributed to the damage from the concussion, and you keep playing the sport, you are compounding the problem. And that to the point where you're going to need medication and therapy because you don't heal the brain. And so, as we get ready to close here, talk to us about what's your advice to parents in concussions, and what do you, there's a lot. We talked a lot about myths and grooming and treatments and all that, and you're in the business. I mean, what do you wish parents would know before they come to you, and what would you like to tell them about concussions so that they're better prepared, because they're an inevitable part of life, man. You never know when God's got something to teach you, or you got an accident coming. You can't control it. I mean, head injuries are a part of our life. And as much as we try to avoid them, they happen. So, but when they happen to our children or they happen to athletes, I mean, athletes that are also uneducated, with a medical population that's uneducated between the links between brain damage and mental health and contact. So what are some of the parting words of wisdom you'd like to share with our moms and dads, coaches and athletes that are out there?
Yeah, thank you for that. I for this opportunity to talk about this, because this is again something that I feel so strongly about. I want people to know that it is serious and to take it seriously. Your brain, again, you get one of them and it impacts every aspect of your life and being. So take it seriously. I think for caregivers and loved ones who are, parents who are watching a kiddo who's struggling, like um, some of the biggest advice that I would have for them is to believe them when they tell you what they're experiencing. I think especially that's advice that I've heard so often coming from caregivers, coming from people who've experienced concussions. Like if they feel seen and believed, it really makes a big difference. And then you can go on, and I'll talk about some other things, but that belief that what they're saying is true makes a difference. And I think especially from a parent perspective, like just the other day, my daughter was like calling home. She's been doing this a lot lately. She's 7. She's like, Mom, my finger hurts or something, like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're going to be fine. Like that's my kind of default. so I have to like turn the mirror on myself to tell myself to give my daughter the same kind of grace. But really, if your kiddo's had a head injury, believe them when they tell you what they're experiencing, even if it doesn't make sense that it, why would your stomach be hurting? That you had a concussion 3 months ago, 3 weeks ago, like this doesn't make sense. Believe them. Take them at their word and research it. Like look into concussions, understand it yourself, like, and then help them find help. Go to appointments with them, help them answer the questions, write down the things the doctors are saying, like be an advocate for them in the school system. There are accommodations that schools can make. And again, if it's a kid, they're not going to be aware of these things or thinking to look for it or whatever. So that's one part that a parent can definitely step in for. But also, like you can push for things that they won't think of and that really can make a difference for them in schools. Have have good food options for them, help them to like have healthy things around them, and have those hard conversations when it's needed. And just in relation to the mental health piece, like sit down when not obviously not when they're in the middle of like having a meltdown or something, but when you can talk to them like, how are you feeling, what's happening for you. And there are like suicide prevention classes that are free or low cost. Like it might be worth looking into that for yourself as a parent. And one of the things that when I took one of those classes that kind of surprised me was, I think a lot of times people are like afraid to say the word suicide to somebody who they're worried about having those kinds of ideations. And the advice is, no, you need to have that conversation. You talk about it. Don't like the fact that you're talking about it isn't going to put ideas into their head. If they're having those ideas, you need to know about it so you can get them the help that they need. So again, just believe them, be onto it, and know that these things are possible, because a lot of times people just don't know about that ahead of time. So educating yourself, listening to these kinds of podcasts that give this information is really important. And just prioritize that kiddo and their brain over the sport or whatever else it is.
You couldn't have closed with a better statement. And you're talking to a father that loved his son. I would put my love up above anybody's in this world. And, when he said his back hurt or his brain hurt because we didn't know about the connections, like, all right, well, you got to drink more water, son. Let's get some more sleep, right? Let's take care of yourself, and
And
never
those are
did we.
important.
What's that?
Those things are important. But yes,
But
I
that's
just
where
want
your brain goes, and when you're uneducated and you think you know it all as a parent. And we prioritized our child, and he's still not here because we were unaware of that link. And he wasn't trying to tell us anything more than he was saying. He just he didn't like light and noise. He liked his room dark. He was, kind of getting apathetic. That was all due to his brain damage, and because we were, ignorant, and that's why these podcasts are so important. We failed to identify his problems, and they mushroomed and blossomed until he couldn't be here anymore. And that was
well,
all due to parental, not neglect, just parental ignorance. And I wish I would have listened more and dug in deeper, and but without the red flags that you usually see, you just keep diving back to it and all that. But to your point about prioritizing your kid over the sport, our son just wanted to play the sports. He wanted to be with his friends, man. That was it. He wasn't definitely going to be in the NFL. He wasn't going to be, on the Olympic wrestling team. And we all knew that, but he was having so much fun. Yet he was getting hurt every time because he wanted to be with his friends, and that's a big lesson there for, you all out there to listen to Bethany and what she's bringing to this argument about, delaying contact at least till high school, and then taking the contact out of practice to make these sports safer, because these are brain injuries and they have significant impact on our children and their futures. And sometimes they don't turn out that good.
yeah. And can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Reminded me, like the things that you were describing, watching your son, like those are things that I think it's especially hard with teenagers, because they're changing their whole, like their hormones are changing. Like they are like, it's not uncommon for kids to get moody and want to be by themselves and pull away. And like, there are things that it is very easy to miss. And like the emotional stuff, the irritability, like that could be, it's it's so easy to just brush off concussion symptoms as, oh, it's just being a teenager. Oh, they're just going through a phase. Like that's what makes it so hard as well. So again, I think the education piece, understanding that those can be related, and getting that attention to it is just so important.
It is, man. So Miss Bethany, as we close, I want you to tell everybody all about you. What do you have going on? How do they find your podcast? What's next for Bethany Lewis? And give them, just some parting words before we close.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, my passion is I see myself kind of as like a guide on people's concussion recovery journey, and it's people who are dealing with post-concussion symptoms. It's you've had it for a while. So I'm not the person to go to if you have an acute thing, but if you've been dealing with it for a while and you're like, what is happening? I take that whole person approach and want to help people find the physical piece, but then really support in those mental, emotional, and nervous system pieces that we can talk about. So I love helping people with that. And I have a free podcast. It is called the Concussion Coach Podcast. You can find it on any of the major major podcasting platforms, including YouTube. And then I have a website. I have a free guide that people can, the guide is called the 5 best ways to help your loved one dealing with concussion. So again, this is to loved one, to parents and caregivers, or if somebody has a concussion and they want other people to know what they're dealing with, it's a great resource. It's on my website, which is theconcussioncoach.com. But yeah, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well, the Concussion Coach. So find me. I love putting out content. I feel very passionate about this and really, really love helping people on this journey. Just because there's a lot of misinformation and just a lot of lack of knowledge out there. So feel very strongly about helping people on this path.
Bethany, you're an amazing mom and an amazing guest. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge on our show with our audience. And like I said, I appreciate your passion. You just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job. And if there's anything we can do for you, please let me know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for this opportunity and for everything you're doing. It's so good.
Got to do my best till I see that boy again, man. So another amazing episode of Broken Brains. We really appreciate your participation. Please like us. Please share us. Please join us. We're on, all the major channels out there. Remember, we got a free book, the only book for parents. Look how thin this is, okay? You can read this, 2 boxes of popcorn. I actually just rewrote it. It's 50% thicker with all this new information. It's free. Free. Go to the website. Get smart. Stay in touch with Bethany. Learn about what these... just learn about how important it is to understand when it is a brain injury and that you got to take it seriously. We have an app on the Google App Store called Head Smart. Please go ahead and download it. It's got all the RHI, repetitive ed impacts on it. And we just announced the dates for our third summit for repetitive brain trauma here at the Center for Advanced Medical Learning at University of Southern Florida. Yeah, it's going to be September 16th and 17th. Bethany would love to see you there. We've got amazing guest speakers, panels. We're going to talk about kids, talk about sports, treatment, legislation. And what it does is, most of all, is what you just saw with Bethany. It's about action. Enough research, enough talking about this. We know we have a problem. We have children not here, children suffer in silence. Let's get them the help we need. Till the next time on Broken Brains with your host, me, Mac's father. We'll talk to you later. Remember, your children only have one melon. Help them take care of it. Talk to you later. God bless you all. See you next time on Broken Brains.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.